I bought my dream house and invited my entire family for a housewarming, but no one showed up. Instead, they all went to celebrate at my sister's tiny new apartment. I sat alone in the empty living room, and just as I turned on the lights, my phone lit up with a message from my mom: "We need to talk. Now." I'm still shaking as I write this. What happened tonight has completely shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. I need to get this out before I lose my mind, so here goes. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. I've been working as a software engineer for the past 6 years, grinding 60-hour weeks and living in a cramped studio apartment to save every penny I could. My dream was always to own a beautiful home where I could host family gatherings, create memories, and finally have the space I'd always craved growing up in our overcrowded childhood home. 3 months ago, that dream became reality. After years of saving, I put down a deposit on a gorgeous 4-bedroom colonial in Maplewood Heights, about 40 minutes from where most of my family lives. It is everything I'd ever wanted: a spacious kitchen with granite countertops, a living room with a stone fireplace, a dining room that seats 12, and a backyard perfect for barbecues. The mortgage is steep, but I could afford it, and I was so incredibly proud. My family seemed happy for me when I told them about the house. My parents, Robert and Linda, congratulated me over dinner. My older sister Jessica seemed genuinely excited and asked to see pictures. My younger brother Michael said he was proud of me for achieving my goals. Even my extended family, my aunts Carol and Patricia, my uncle Dave, and my cousins Emma and Tyler, all seemed thrilled when I shared the news at my cousin Emma's birthday party last month. So naturally, when I planned my housewarming party for tonight, I expected them all to come. This was supposed to be my moment. I'd worked so hard for this, sacrificed so much, and I wanted to celebrate with the people I loved most. I sent out invitations 3 weeks ago. Not just text messages, actual printed invitations with my new address, the date and time, and a note about how excited I was to share this milestone with them. I followed up with phone calls to make sure everyone had the details. Every single person confirmed they'd be there. I spent the entire week preparing. I deep cleaned every room, arranged fresh flowers throughout the house, and planned a menu that included everyone's favorite foods. I bought enough groceries to feed an army and spent 2 full days cooking. Mom's favorite lasagna recipe, Dad's beloved pulled pork, Jessica's preferred spinach and artichoke dip, Michael's favorite chocolate chip cookies. I even made Aunt Carol's special request for her weird but beloved ambrosia salad. I set up a bar in the kitchen with expensive wine and craft beer. I arranged photo displays showing the house renovation process. I even bought party games and created a playlist of everyone's favorite songs. The house looked perfect, like something out of a magazine. I was so proud and so excited to show it off. The party was supposed to start at 6 o'clock. By 5:30, I had changed into my new dress, a beautiful navy blue number I'd splurged on specifically for tonight, and was putting the finishing touches on the appetizer spread. I kept glancing out the front window, watching for cars to pull into my circular driveway. 6 o'clock came and went. Then 6:15. Then 6:30. I started making phone calls. Mom's phone went straight to voicemail. So did Dad's. Jessica's phone rang several times before going to voicemail. Michael didn't answer either. I tried my aunts and uncle, same result. Emma and Tyler, my cousins who are usually glued to their phones, weren't picking up either. By 7 o'clock, I was genuinely worried. Had there been an accident? A family emergency I hadn't heard about? My mind raced through terrible possibilities. Maybe someone was in the hospital. Maybe there had been a crisis and they'd all rushed to help. I decided to drive to my parents' house to check on everyone. But as I grabbed my keys, I remembered that Jessica had mentioned something about finally getting approved for her own apartment. She'd been living at home with Mom and Dad since her divorce 2 years ago, and getting her own place, even if it was tiny, was a big deal for her. On a whim, I decided to check her social media before leaving. That's when my world tilted off its axis. There, at the top of my Instagram feed, was a post from my cousin Emma. The timestamp showed it was posted 20 minutes ago. The photo showed a crowded, laughing group of people crammed into a small living room, holding drinks and plates of food. The caption read, "Celebrating Jess's new place. So proud of you, girl," house emoji, party popper emoji, #family time, #new beginnings. I recognized that living room. I recognized those people. It was my entire family. Every single person who was supposed to be at my housewarming party was instead at Jessica's apartment, celebrating her new place. My parents were there, laughing and holding wine glasses. My brother Michael was there, arm around Jessica, both of them grinning at the camera. Aunt Carol was there with her husband Dave. Aunt Patricia was there with my cousins. Everyone. Every single person who had confirmed they'd be at my party. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. The hurt that washed over me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just disappointment or sadness, it was a deep, crushing betrayal that made my chest feel hollow. They had deliberately chosen Jessica's celebration over mine. They had all lied to me, confirmed they'd be at my party, and then went to hers instead. This wasn't an oversight or a miscommunication. This was intentional. I drove back to my empty house in a daze. The beautiful spread of food looked ridiculous now, enough to feed 15 people, sitting there untouched. The decorations I'd so carefully arranged seemed to mock me. The house that had felt like a dream come true suddenly felt enormous and cold. I sat down in my living room, still in my party dress, and just stared at the stone fireplace I'd been so excited to show everyone. The silence was deafening. I had never felt so alone in my entire life. That's when I decided to turn on the lights in every room of the house. I don't know why, maybe I was trying to make it feel less empty, or maybe I was hoping the brightness would chase away some of the darkness I felt inside. The moment I flipped the last light switch in the hallway, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mom. "We need to talk. Now." My stomach dropped. The casual tone, the demanding nature of it, this wasn't an apology or an explanation for missing my party. This sounded ominous. I called her immediately. "Sarah," Mom answered on the first ring, and her voice was cold in a way I'd rarely heard. "Mom, what's going on? Why didn't anyone come to my party?" "I saw the photos from Jessica's place. That's exactly what we need to discuss," she interrupted. "Your father and I are coming over. We'll be there in 30 minutes. "Mom, I don't understand. What's wrong? Why is everyone at Jessica's instead of 30 minutes, Sarah? We'll explain everything then." She hung up. I sat there holding my dead phone, completely bewildered. The hurt from being abandoned at my own party was now mixed with a growing dread. Something was very wrong, but I had no idea what. I spent the next 30 minutes pacing around my beautiful, empty house, trying to figure out what I could have possibly done wrong. Had I offended someone? Had I been insensitive about something? I replayed every recent interaction with my family members, searching for clues, but came up empty. When my parents arrived, I could see immediately that this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Dad looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as he walked through my front door. Mom looked stern and determined in a way that reminded me of the times she'd confronted me about serious misbehavior as a child. "Nice house," Dad said quietly, glancing around the foyer. "Really beautiful, Sarah." "Thanks, Dad. I was hoping you'd get to see it tonight, along with everyone else." I couldn't keep the hurt out of my voice. Mom got straight to the point. "Sarah, we need to talk about your attitude." "My attitude?" I was genuinely confused. "What about my attitude?" "Your bragging. Your constant need to show off. The way you've been acting since you got this house." Mom's voice was sharp and accusatory. I felt like I'd been slapped. "Bragging? Mom," I shared my excitement about buying my first home. "How is that bragging?" "You've been rubbing it in everyone's faces," she continued. "Do you have any idea how your constant talk about granite countertops and stone fireplaces makes Jessica feel? She's been struggling since her divorce, working 2 jobs just to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, and you're flaunting your success like it doesn't matter that others are having a hard time." I wasn't flaunting anything. I was excited and wanted to share. "You were being insensitive," Dad chimed in, finally looking at me. "Your sister has been going through a really tough time, Sarah. She lost her house in the divorce, she's been living with us for 2 years, and she finally gets approved for a tiny place, and all you can talk about is your 4 bedrooms and your perfect kitchen." I was stunned. "So you all decided to boycott my housewarming party to punish me for being excited about my house?" "We decided to support Jessica instead," Mom said. "She needed us tonight. She was nervous about having people over to her new place because it's so small compared to what she's used to. When she mentioned she was thinking about having a little get-together the same night as your party, we thought it was more important to be there for her. But you all confirmed you'd be here. You let me plan and cook and prepare. We didn't want to hurt your feelings by canceling, Mom said, which was somehow the most infuriating thing she could have said. We thought maybe you'd understand when we didn't show up. Understand what? That my own family thinks I'm so terrible that you'd rather lie to me and abandon me than just have an honest conversation? Don't be dramatic, Sarah, Mom snapped. This isn't about abandoning you. This is about you learning that not everything is about you and your achievements. I stood there in my beautiful living room, still wearing my party dress, surrounded by untouched food and decorations, listening to my parents tell me that I deserved to spend my housewarming party alone because I had committed the apparently unforgivable sin of being excited about my success. Get out, I said quietly. Sarah, get out of my house. Now. Honey, we're trying to help you understand. I understand perfectly. I understand that my own family thinks I'm selfish and bragging for being proud of working 60-hour weeks for 6 years to afford this place. I understand that instead of talking to me if you had concerns about my behavior, you decided to humiliate me instead. I understand that you think Jessica's feelings are more important than mine, and that you're willing to lie to me and abandon me to protect her. Dad looked uncomfortable. Sarah, that's not, it's exactly what happened, Dad. And now I understand something else. I understand that I can't trust any of you. I understand that my success makes you uncomfortable, and instead of being proud of me, you'd rather tear me down to make others feel better. Mom's expression shifted from stern to frustrated. You're not listening to what we're trying to tell you. No, you're not listening to what I'm telling you. I'm telling you to get out of my house and don't come back until you're ready to apologize for what you did tonight. They tried to argue for a few more minutes, but I was done. I walked to the front door and held it open until they left. After they drove away, I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by enough food to feed my entire extended family, and I cried. I cried for the excitement I'd felt about sharing this moment with them. I cried for the trust that had been shattered. I cried for the realization that the people I loved most in the world viewed my happiness as a threat to others. But then, somewhere around midnight, the sadness started turning into something else. Anger. And with that anger came clarity. I started thinking about all the times over the years when I'd downplayed my achievements to make others comfortable. The time I got promoted to senior engineer and didn't tell anyone because Jessica was job hunting. The time I got a bonus and kept it quiet because Michael was struggling with student loans. The time I was accepted into graduate school but decided not to go because I didn't want to seem like I was showing off. I had spent years making myself smaller to accommodate other people's insecurities, and it still wasn't enough. Even when I finally decided to celebrate something I'd worked incredibly hard for, it was somehow wrong. I realized that this wasn't really about Jessica's feelings or my supposed bragging. This was about control. This was about a family dynamic where I was expected to be successful enough to be useful when others needed help, but not so successful that it made anyone else feel bad about their own choices. As I sat there in my kitchen at 2 a.m., surrounded by untouched party food, I started thinking about all the times this pattern had played out before. Like when I got my first promotion at work 3 years ago. I'd been so excited to share the news, but when I called Mom, her first response wasn't congratulations, it was concern about how Jessica would feel since she'd just been laid off. I ended up downplaying the promotion and focusing the conversation on helping Jessica with her job search instead. Or the time I won a company award for outstanding performance and received a $5,000 bonus. I'd wanted to take the family out to celebrate at a nice restaurant, but Dad suggested it might be insensitive since Michael was struggling to pay his student loans. I ended up giving Michael $2,000 from the bonus instead of celebrating my achievement. Even smaller things followed this pattern. When I bought my first nice car, nothing flashy, just a reliable Honda Civic that was newer than the 15-year-old beater I'd been driving, Jessica made comments about how nice it must be to have money to burn while she was driving Dad's old pickup truck. I felt so guilty that I offered to co-sign a loan so she could get a better car, which of course she accepted. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how exhausting this dynamic had become. I was constantly monitoring my own happiness, measuring my excitement about my achievements against everyone else's circumstances, and finding ways to make myself smaller so others wouldn't feel bad. And what had it gotten me? Tonight's betrayal proved that no amount of self-diminishing would ever be enough. Even when I finally decided to celebrate something I'd worked incredibly hard for, it was still somehow wrong. I was still somehow the problem. I started making a list on my phone of all the times I'd provided financial or emotional support to my family members over the years. The numbers were staggering. Between direct loans, gifts that were never expected to be repaid, covering bills during emergencies, and funding various family celebrations and needs, I had given them tens of thousands of dollars over the past 5 years. And that didn't even count the emotional labor, the hours spent listening to problems, providing advice, mediating conflicts, and being the responsible one everyone could count on. When had any of them provided that level of support to me? When I was working those brutal 60-hour weeks to save for this house, who offered to help me with meal prep or house cleaning so I could have some time to relax? When I was stressed about the mortgage approval process, who offered emotional support or celebrated with me when it went through? When I was making difficult decisions about neighborhoods and home inspections, who took an interest in helping me navigate that process? The answer was uncomfortable but clear: nobody. I had been so busy being the family safety net that I'd forgotten to expect anything in return. And they had gotten so comfortable with that arrangement that when I finally needed something from them, just their presence at my celebration, they couldn't be bothered to show up. But what really broke my heart as I sat there was realizing that this wasn't even about the money or the practical support. It was about respect. It was about being valued as a person, not just as a resource. It was about having people in my life who were genuinely happy for my successes, not threatened by them. I thought about my coworkers, who had been nothing but excited and supportive when I told them about buying the house. My friend Rachel had literally squealed with excitement when I sent her the listing photos. My book club had toasted my achievement at our last meeting. These people, who had no obligation to care about my milestones, were more genuinely happy for me than my own family. That's when I started to understand that the problem wasn't me being insensitive or bragging. The problem was that I had accepted a family dynamic where my role was to be successful enough to be useful, but not so successful that I made anyone else examine their own choices. Jessica could complain about her tiny apartment and receive sympathy and support from everyone, but I couldn't express excitement about my beautiful house without being accused of bragging. Michael could ask for help with his car repairs and expect immediate assistance, but I couldn't ask for emotional support during my housewarming without being told I was being dramatic. The double standard was breathtaking once I saw it clearly. I also started thinking about the logistics of what they'd done. This wasn't a spontaneous decision, they had to coordinate with each other. Someone had to suggest the idea of all going to Jessica's instead. Someone had to make sure everyone was on board. Someone had to decide not to tell me. This was a conspiracy, and every single one of them was complicit. The image of them all crowded into Jessica's small living room, laughing and celebrating while they knew I was sitting alone in my empty house, was burned into my mind. How could they have enjoyed themselves knowing what they were doing to me? How could they have raised their glasses and smiled for photos while they were actively betraying someone they claimed to love? I realized that I needed to know more about how this had all come together. I needed to understand the depth of their deception before I could figure out how to move forward. So I did something I'd never done before. I went through their social media posts more carefully, looking for clues about when and how they'd planned this betrayal. What I found was even worse than I'd imagined. Jessica had posted about getting approved for her apartment 2 weeks ago. The post had dozens of comments from family members congratulating her and offering to help her move and get settled. Mom had commented, "So proud of you, sweetheart. We'll have to plan a proper celebration once you're all moved in." That was posted on the same day I had called Mom to confirm she'd be at my housewarming party. Then I found a group text screenshot that Emma had posted to her Instagram story a week ago. It showed a conversation between several family members discussing Jess's housewarming party and coordinating who would bring what food. The timestamp showed this conversation happened 3 days after I had personally called each of them to confirm they'd be at my party. They had been planning Jessica's celebration while lying to my face about attending mine. They had been coordinating behind my back while I was cooking their favorite foods and preparing to welcome them into my home. The level of deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a last-minute change of plans or a miscommunication. This was a calculated betrayal that had been in the works for days, possibly weeks. I screenshot everything and saved it to a folder on my phone. I didn't know what I was going to do with the evidence yet, but I knew I needed to document the full scope of their lies. As the sun started to come up, I was emotionally exhausted but mentally clear about one thing: I was done being the family doormat. I was done accepting scraps of attention and appreciation while giving my all to people who didn't value me. I was done making excuses for people who treated me poorly and then expected me to be available whenever they needed something. That's when I decided I was done playing that game. Over the next few days, I started making some calls. I reached out to friends and colleagues who had been genuinely excited about my house purchase. I invited my college roommate Rachel and her husband Mark over for dinner. I had my coworker Jennifer and her family over for a barbecue. I hosted a game night for my book club. These people were thrilled to see my house. They celebrated my achievement without making me feel guilty for it. They asked genuine questions about my renovation plans and complimented my decorating choices without any undercurrent of resentment or judgment. It was during that week that I realized how toxic my family dynamic had become. In healthy relationships, people celebrate each other's successes. They don't compete or tear each other down or make each other feel guilty for achieving their goals. My family, meanwhile, was radio silent. No apologies, no attempts to explain further, no acknowledgement that they had hurt me. Jessica posted several more photos of her cozy new apartment, each one tagged with family members who were helping her settle in or coming to visit. The silence might have continued indefinitely, but then something happened that changed everything. Michael called me on a Thursday evening, about 10 days after the disastrous housewarming party. "Hey, Sarah, I need a favor," he said without preamble. "Hello to you too, Michael." "Yeah, hi. Listen, I'm in a bit of a bind. My transmission went out on my car, and the repair is going to cost $3,000. I was wondering if I could borrow the money from you. I'll pay you back, obviously." I was quiet for a moment. Let me get this straight. You want to borrow money from the sister who you think is selfish and bragging and insensitive? Come on, Sarah, don't be like that. That whole thing with the party was just. Look, Mom thought it would be better to support Jessica, but that doesn't mean we don't care about you. It means exactly that, Michael. You all made a choice to lie to me and humiliate me rather than have an honest conversation. And now you want me to bail you out financially? It's not like that. This is different. This is family helping family. Family helping family would have been showing up to my housewarming party. Family helping family would have been talking to me if you thought I was being insensitive instead of conspiring behind my back. Family helping family would have been apologizing when you realized how much you hurt me. Sarah, I really need this money. Then asked Jessica. Or Mom and Dad. Or any of the family members who were so important to support that night instead of coming to my party. They don't have that kind of money available right now. But the selfish, bragging sister does? Michael was quiet for a moment. Look, I'm sorry about the party, okay? We should have handled it differently. But can you please help me out here? I'll lose my job if I can't get to work. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. I didn't think about it. I knew my answer immediately. But I was curious to see what would happen next. What happened next was a cascade of phone calls. First, Jessica called, asking if I could help Michael out since I was doing so well financially. Then Mom called, saying the family needed to stick together and help each other out. Then Aunt Carol called, mentioning that she'd heard Michael was having car trouble and wasn't it great that I was in a position to help family members in need. The pattern was clear. When they needed something from me, I was family. When I needed emotional support, I was selfish and bragging. That's when I decided on my revenge. And it was beautiful in its simplicity. I called a family meeting. I told everyone that I had something important to discuss and asked them all to come to my house on Sunday afternoon. I said I wanted to clear the air about the housewarming party situation and discuss Michael's request for financial help. They all agreed to come. Suddenly, my house was an acceptable place to visit when they needed something from me. I spent Saturday preparing, but not the way I had for the housewarming party. This time, I was strategic. On Sunday afternoon, they all showed up. Mom, Dad, Jessica, Michael, even Aunt Carol and Uncle Dave. They filled my living room, looking around at the house they'd refused to celebrate with me, many of them seeing it for the first time. Thank you all for coming, I said, standing in front of the fireplace they'd all avoided seeing 3 weeks earlier. I asked you here because I wanted to address a few things, and I thought it would be better to do it all at once. Sarah, Mom started, we're glad you're ready to move past this whole misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I interrupted. It was a deliberate choice you all made to lie to me and prioritize Jessica's feelings over mine. But I'm not here to rehash that. I'm here to tell you about some decisions I've made. I looked around the room at their expectant faces. Michael looked hopeful, probably thinking I was about to announce I'd loan him the money. Jessica looked cautious but relieved, likely thinking I was going to apologize for being insensitive. Mom and Dad looked like they were preparing to graciously accept my apology and move on. First, Michael, about your request for $3,000 for your car repairs. I've decided not to loan you the money. His face fell. Sarah, come on. Let me finish. I'm not loaning you the money, but I am going to give you some advice. You might try asking the family members who were so important to support that they were worth lying to me about. I'm sure Jessica would be happy to help, since you all prioritized her needs over mine. That's not fair, Jessica said. You know I can't afford. Second, I continued, I want to let you all know that I will no longer be available as the family bank. Over the years, I've helped Mom and Dad with their roof repairs, loaned Jessica money during her divorce, paid for Michael's textbooks, helped Aunt Carol with her medical bills, and contributed to numerous family emergencies and celebrations. I was happy to do it because I thought we were a family that supported each other. I paused, looking around the room. They were all staring at me with varying expressions of shock and discomfort. But I've realized that this support only goes one way. When I needed emotional support 3 weeks ago, when I wanted to celebrate a major milestone with the people I love, I was told I was selfish and bragging. When I needed my family to show up for me, I was abandoned. So I've decided to adjust my level of involvement accordingly. Sarah, you're being ridiculous, Mom said. We made one mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Mom. It was a choice. You chose to lie to me rather than have an honest conversation. You chose to humiliate me rather than support me. You chose to prioritize Jessica's comfort over my feelings. Those were deliberate choices, and they showed me exactly where I stand in this family. That's not true, Dad said quietly. We love you, Sarah. We're proud of what you've accomplished. If that were true, Dad, you would have been here 3 weeks ago, celebrating with me instead of conspiring against me. I took a breath before continuing. Third, I want to let you know that I won't be hosting family gatherings anymore. I know that might be disappointing since my house is bigger and more comfortable than most of yours, but I've realized that my home is only welcome to people who actually want to be here, not people who view my success as something to be ashamed of. You're punishing us for one incident, Jessica said, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. I'm protecting myself from people who think my happiness is a threat to theirs, I corrected. I'm setting boundaries with people who lie to me and then expect me to be available whenever they need something. This is ridiculous, Sarah, Aunt Carol said. Families go through rough patches. You don't just cut people off. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm simply matching the energy you've all shown me. You've made it clear that my feelings and needs come last in this family. So I'm adjusting my expectations and my level of involvement accordingly. I walked over to the side table where I'd prepared envelopes for each family unit. I've prepared something for each of you, I said, handing out the envelopes. Go ahead and open them. They looked confused but opened their envelopes. Inside each one was a printed photograph, the screenshot I'd taken of Emma's Instagram post showing them all at Jessica's apartment, celebrating while I sat alone in my house. I wanted to make sure you all remember exactly what happened that night, I said. In case anyone was tempted to rewrite history or minimize what you did. The room was dead silent. Several of them were staring at the photo, probably remembering for the first time how it must have felt for me to see that image. Finally, I said, I want to thank you all for teaching me something very important about relationships and boundaries. You've taught me that I've been so focused on being the supportive family member, the successful one who could always be counted on to help, that I forgot to expect basic respect and consideration in return. I walked back to my position in front of the fireplace. So here's what's going to happen going forward. I'm going to continue being successful, and I'm going to celebrate my achievements with people who are genuinely happy for me. I'm going to continue being generous, but only with people who show up for me the way I've shown up for them. I'm going to continue hosting gatherings in my beautiful home, but only for people who actually want to be here. Sarah, Mom said, and her voice was smaller now, less certain. I think we need to talk about this more. No, Mom. We've talked enough. You had 3 weeks to reach out and apologize, 3 weeks to try to make things right, 3 weeks to acknowledge that you hurt me. Instead, you stayed silent until you needed something from me. That tells me everything I need to know. I looked around the room one more time. You're all welcome to stay and think about whether you want to be the kind of family that supports each other or the kind that tears each other down out of jealousy and insecurity. But either way, I'm done trying to earn your approval by making myself smaller. You can't just shut us out of your life, Jessica said, and she was crying now. I'm not shutting you out. I'm just treating you the way you've shown me you want to be treated. If you want a relationship with me, then you need to show me that you actually value me as a person, not just as a resource to be used when convenient. Michael stood up abruptly. This is insane, Sarah. We're family. Family forgives each other and moves on. You're absolutely right, Michael. Family does forgive each other. But first, they apologize. They acknowledge the hurt they've caused. They take responsibility for their actions. None of you have done that. Instead, you've minimized what you did and expected me to just get over it. So what, you're going to hold this grudge forever? Uncle Dave asked. I'm going to protect my peace and my energy. I'm going to invest in relationships with people who invest in me. I'm going to celebrate my successes with people who are genuinely happy for me. If you want to be part of that, then you know what you need to do. One by one, they started to leave. Some of them tried to argue further, but I was done engaging. Jessica was the last to leave, and she paused at the door. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't realize. I was so focused on my own stuff that I didn't think about how this would affect you. It was the first genuine apology I'd received from any of them. Thank you for saying that, Jess. That means a lot. Can we try to fix this? I looked at my sister, standing in the doorway of the house she'd refused to celebrate with me. I'd like that. But it's going to require more than just saying sorry. It's going to require actually changing how we treat each other. She nodded and left. That was 3 months ago. In the time since, my life has changed dramatically, and almost entirely for the better. I've built stronger friendships with people who genuinely support me. I've hosted dinner parties and game nights and holiday celebrations for friends who actually want to be in my home. I've joined local groups and met new people who share my interests and values. Some of my family members have reached out to apologize and try to rebuild our relationship. Jessica and I have had several long conversations, and while it's still a work in progress, I do think she's genuinely trying to understand how her actions affected me. Dad called a few weeks after the family meeting to say he was sorry and that he was proud of me. We've had coffee twice since then, and while things aren't back to normal, they're improving. Others have doubled down on their original position. Mom still insists that I'm being dramatic and punishing them disproportionately. Michael lost his job because he couldn't afford to fix his car and couldn't find alternative transportation, and he blames me for not helping him. Aunt Carol has told other family members that I've gotten too big for my britches and that success has made me selfish. But here's the thing I've learned: their reactions have told me everything I need to know about who they really are and what they really think of me. The people who were genuinely sorry and wanted to make things right have put in the effort to do so. The people who are still angry at me for having boundaries and expectations are not people I want in my life anyway. I've also learned that I spent years trying to manage other people's emotions at the expense of my own well-being. I made myself smaller, dimmed my light, and downplayed my achievements because I was afraid of making others feel bad. But their feelings about my success are not my responsibility. Their insecurities are not my problem to solve. The house that was supposed to be a symbol of my success became something even better. It became the catalyst for me to finally value myself the way I should have all along. I still live in my beautiful home, and I still love every inch of it. The kitchen where I planned that disastrous housewarming party has hosted countless successful gatherings since then. The living room where I sat alone that night has been filled with laughter and good conversation with people who actually want to be here. And you know what? I'm not sorry for being successful. I'm not sorry for being excited about my achievements. I'm not sorry for expecting the people who claim to love me to actually show up for me when it matters. I worked hard for this house and this life, And I deserve to celebrate it with people who celebrate me right back. I'm finally surrounded by people who do exactly that, and my life has never been better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at people who hurt you. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let them keep hurting you and building a better life without them.